Anthony Joshua and Oleksandr Usyk have weighed in ahead of their clash on Saturday night. Anthony Joshua weighed in at 240 pounds, pretty much the same as he weighed in the Pulev fight. Usyk, on the other hand, weighed 221 and 1/4 pounds, only 4 pounds heavier than his last fight against Derek Chisora. And there were a lot of questions about what kind of weight Oleksandr Usyk would come into this fight in. And he was like, the people were speculating, they were saying, oh, you know, look at this picture of Oleksandr Usyk and he's got this massive table of food in front of him. He's clearly bulking up. Oh, look at the recent footage. He's training for power. He's training to gain mass and knock out Anthony Joshua. I would take these things on board, but I've always wanted to see and wait until the very day where he weighs in. I had a feeling he'd be slightly heavier than his previous fights, not only because it's now going to be his third fight at heavyweight, and therefore you'd expect him to establish himself a bit more, get a bit more comfortable with a little bit more weight. But also, just looking at the physique of Oleksandr Usyk, not much has changed, to be honest. So I think it's quite evenly distributed, this weight that he's put on, this 4¼ pounds, which isn't that much for someone who's of Oleksandr Usyk's dimensions. But if you look at his neck and his traps and his shoulders, I think those seem to show the most increase in size. So I think he's trying to bulk up that area, maybe for, you know, a bit of punch resistance, improvement or enhancement, something like that. But you have to remember that Oleksandr Usyk, he's not a small man. He's a big man. He just happens to be smaller than the likes of Anthony Joshua. And so there are a lot of people writing this fight off based on the fact that it's a cruiserweight coming up to heavyweight to fight one of the consensus best at heavyweight. But bigger doesn't always mean, it doesn't mean the bigger person wins by default. Size is an important factor, yes, but it's not the only factor. So in my opinion, this is a real close fight and a real good fight. I can't wait. I've been consuming all the media I can on this fight. I'm so excited for this. And I think it's going to be a real good fight, a really close fight. And so let's break it down. Let's see how this fight goes. So I've done 2 studies on this fight. The kind of based on the similar thing, both the IQ and the lead hand in particular of both fighters. So those are boxing studies where we analyze actual fight film. So if you haven't watched those, please do so. I think it will help to make a lot of these things in this video a lot clearer. So yeah, I'll link those in the description below. So Anthony Joshua, I think, being the bigger man with the longer reach, he has to make the most of it. And he has to maintain distance, especially if Anthony Joshua is coasting rounds. We've seen in the Ruiz fight, and I think the Pulev fight, because Joshua has always had stamina concerns, he does a better job now of trying to manage his pace throughout a fight. But see, the thing is, by doing so, his output drops and his activity dips a little bit. And that's not something you want to do against a fighter like Oleksandr Usyk, who we've seen starts relatively slowly early on. But then once he gets going after a few rounds, he doesn't stop. And he keeps up the mental pressure as well as the physical pressure, constantly changing his position in the ring, constantly feinting and probing and really trying to get a reaction from you. And that is very draining. It's a very draining style to go up against. And so Anthony Joshua is going to have to look to maintain distance and keep Oleksandr out of range if he's going to coast. But I think at any point in the fight, you don't want Oleksandr Usyk to get in his comfort zone. He's going to need to take away the mobility of Oleksandr Usyk. So Oleksandr Usyk is obviously coming up from cruiserweight. He's naturally much lighter than Anthony Joshua. Naturally has better mobility and better stamina. He has mobility and stamina that allows him to move around for an entire fight. If you look at the Chisora fight, Chisora put Usyk under a lot of pressure. I know AJ and Chisora don't fight the same way, but Usyk was able to, his stamina held up and his mobility held up to the pressure of Derek Chisora, who's a big man slinging big shots. But Usyk he looked fresh late on in the fight. He still had a lot of quality to his movement, was buzzing and stunning Derek Chisora late in that fight. So Usyk, he has that movement advantage. And so Joshua's going to need to take that away from Usyk. And his best bet is probably to back him up to the corner or the ropes. A lot of people say take his mobility away with body shots. That is a factor, but the only body shot I can see being available to Joshua is the straight right to the body, in terms of in relation to how both guys are positioned relative to one another. But see, the thing is, Joshua, I think with single shots, he's not the best. He sometimes, I don't want to say rushes his single shots, but his biomechanics just aren't great, especially the right hand. It's like 50-50 with his right hand. Sometimes it's really good. Other times it does leave a bit to be desired and he can fall off balance. And we've seen that Oleksandr Usyk is very quick on the counter, and you can't afford to be out of position or off balance in front of him. So I think Joshua's going to have to take the center ring and force Usyk back, stop him from moving laterally and try and back him up to the corner of the ropes. I think if Usyk does attempt to move laterally and sometimes pivot on the front foot, which is quite common in a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, this is something that one of my videos I made months ago regarding the Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez fight was Billy Joe Saunders had a habit of hooking with his right hook, his lead hook, and pivoting off. And I said that it would be a key factor, and it should be really a target of Canelo, to catch Billy Joe Saunders as he's through that pivot, because it's a very precarious position to be in, because it's difficult to offend, it's difficult to defend when you're on that front foot pivot. So I think that's what AJ should aim to do if Usyk does pivot on the front foot, which sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So it's going to be one of those things where he's going to have to take it if it comes. Usyk, his keys to victory. I think he's going to have to stay mobile, of course. He has that advantage over Joshua and he needs to maximize it. He must use his feints and use his probing shots, especially to engage the guard of Joshua. This is something that Oleksandr does so well. Him and Lomachenko are really a cut above when it comes to this, these particular tools, these feints and these probes, to not only engage an opponent and keep him in place, force him to a disadvantageous position, but also gauge their reactions, and then, as we covered in the study, tailor the attack, the plan of attack, around the reactions of the opponent. And I think if Oleksandr Usyk is not able to use his feints and use his probing shots, and he gets put in his shell by Anthony Joshua, it's going to be a very difficult night, and he might just park the bus and move the whole night. So he's going to have to get those feints off, going to have to get those probes off. I think he's going to have to find a way to work around the lead hand of Joshua. Joshua, as I pointed out in his film study, he does feint with the right hand sometimes. But from what I've seen of him, especially in the Pulev fight, which was his most recent fight, obviously, I think he's a bit left hand dominant with with leading with his left hand. And look, that's not bad. Many fighters have made Hall of Fame careers off of that. But why use one hand when you can use two? And so I think I'm not really sure it's going to be the most difficult thing for Usyk to plan a route around the lead hand, the left hand of Joshua. But see, the thing is, he just has to be cognizant of the turnaround of the right hand of Joshua, because it's big, like it's a massive, powerful right hand. It's sharp, it's accurate. But I think Usyk knows. He's an intelligent enough fighter, so I feel like he may have contingencies in place. So as he's working his way around the lead hand, he bears it in mind that that right hand could come at any minute, and he has a backup plan for that. Of course, that's in theory. In practicality, it's much harder than that. But being cognizant of it is the first step towards success. So I hope that's clear. The keys to victory for both men. Of course, at the end of the day, keys to victory, you want to make them as specific as possible, because at the end of the day, it could get as vague as just saying, oh, Joshua needs to hit Usyk more than Usyk hits him. That's a key to victory for any fighter. But specifically pertaining to these fighters and the stylistic matchup, those are the things that I think both guys need to strive to achieve. How does the fight unfold? Now, this is what I've been tossing around in my head like a pancake. Usyk is notoriously a slow starter, quote unquote. I don't think he's slow in the fact that his offense is quite low, the output of it, early on in a fight. But he does a lot of, to quote Ben Davison, who really coined it best, non-punching activity. This is where the cerebral aspect of Usyk is kind of, it's kickstarting the fight, where he uses these feints, these probes, these kind of positional changes, just to find out how his opponent is going to react. And then once again, he tries to plan a route, plan an attack to get to his opponent. And so because of that, I can see Usyk conceding the first 3 rounds, probably the first 3 rounds, to Joshua. Basically electing to feint and move and maybe probe. Maybe it's a little bit too early, but definitely feint and move. And I think that's going to allow Joshua to take the centering from very early on. And some people might think, why would you give up 3 rounds? I don't necessarily see it as him giving up 3 rounds. I'm saying 3 rounds, that's an arbitrary number. I'm just basically meaning the early rounds. And so with Usyk, I think it's his way of getting the information, but also Joshua's going to be at his sharpest early on. This is someone with still potential stamina issues. So he's going to be sharp early on. Anthony Joshua is a phenomenal athlete, of course. And I think Oleksandr Usyk, he wants to warm up a little bit, have an idea of what he's up against. And I think once Usyk has an idea of how Joshua is reacting to the feints and seeing where he can go, because I imagine that Usyk will want to get to the front foot. He understands the value of that position, and he'll see how Joshua is reacting to it. Does Joshua just use his lead hand? Does he feint with the backhand? How is Joshua reacting to that particular change? And I think once from there, he'll probably get a bit more comfortable, and you'll start to see Oleksandr Usyk take time to, he'll be moving, but then he'll take an opportunity to be in front of Joshua and see, and maybe try some attacks. As I say, he's going to have to use those lighter shots, those pity pat shots, some people call them, to really pin Joshua's gloves to his face and get Joshua to shell up. And then from there, Usyk can maybe go to the body, go around the side, and then pivot round, maybe, or just move laterally, keep it going. But after that, I can't see how this fight goes. So I think it's going to be a very good back and forth battle for the remainder of the fight once both guys settle, especially Oleksandr Usyk. And I think, man, it's such a tough fight. It is such a tough fight to predict. I think Oleksandr Usyk is going to... I think Oleksandr Usyk goes the distance in this fight. Just to cut ahead, of course. I think Joshua wins this fight on points. Maybe just because he's able to... Oh man, this is tough. This is so tough. I think Joshua might just be able to land a bit more. I don't necessarily think Joshua's going to have the eye-catching punches. I think the eye-catching punches are going to come from Usyk. I think once Usyk has an idea of how Joshua reacts with the lead hand, he'll be able to counter, maybe split the jab. So what splitting the jab is as Joshua jabs with his lead left, Usyk will be able to slip to his front foot, simultaneously throwing a straight left, catching Joshua that way. I can see Joshua probably getting bloodied up a little bit around the nose from some very sharp and accurate shots from Usyk. But maybe those shots from Usyk, those quality shots, are just a bit too few and far between. And maybe Joshua's catching Usyk on the guard. And I think the size advantage of Joshua will mean that when he lands even on the guard of Usyk, Usyk looks a little bit wobbled, not necessarily dazed and stunned, but just knocked off balance a bit. And I think, unfortunately, this being, I mean, not unfortunately that's taking place in the UK, but we have seen some bias and some favoritism in the UK, sadly, but we have to factor it in, of course. And for that reason, I can see this fight going to points, Joshua winning on points, probably 8 rounds to 4, maybe, yeah, I want to say 8 rounds to 4, that kind of scorecard. And I find it so difficult to pick against Usyk because he is such a quality fighter. But I just think he's really gone the hard route, because out of, say, the top 3 at heavyweight, or most people's top 3 being Fury, Wilder and AJ, I think the hardest fight stylistically for Usyk is AJ. And so he's really just jumped in at the deep end here. But I think it's going to be a great fight. Man, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I think it's going to be... this video is going to be long, but I really like this fight. I love it. I think it's going to feel similar to the Ward-Kovalev fight. Not to say that Ward and Kovalev are like Joshua and Usyk. I just think it's that, you know, in that fight there was a lot of tension between Ward and Kovalev, because it was like you had the massive puncher in Sergey Kovalev, who has skills, but he has the weakness of the inside game. And so you're kind of seeing, how can Ward get past the firing line of Kovalev to get inside and land clean punches and wear Kovalev down? I see this fight being the same way. Both guys are formidable at long range, but then Joshua has the power, but Usyk has a bit more dexterity, even though Joshua is good on the inside. So, man, it's going to be a good fight. But I'm waffling at this point. You can probably tell how amped I am for this fight, but I see Joshua winning on points, 8 rounds to 4. But I don't think Usyk's going to disgrace himself. I think he's going to make Joshua look very vulnerable at spots. Probably bust Joshua up with a couple of shots, but I think the resolve, the size and the power of Joshua and his own degree of skill may just see him edging the rounds, or the majority of the rounds in the judges' eyes, earning him a decision over 12. So let me know what you think of this fight in the comment section below. Once again, please check out the studies I've done on both guys. They've got a lot of views, so I thank you guys so much for if you have tuned in. But I think it'll be it adds some value to this prediction video that I've made here. We're at 300 subscribers as well, guys, so we're under just under a third of the way. The road to 1,000. That's what I'm coining it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have subscribed, please share my videos to anyone who you think will enjoy them or get some kind of value from them. So, yeah, if you can like, comment, share, subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. And thanks for listening, guys. Catch you in the next video.